What are some ridiculous history facts? Ancient Romans would put sandals on the hands of sleeping people, then tickle their face so they would slap themselves. When the Romans laid siege to Themyscira, a real place, weirdly enough, they attempted to tunnel into the city. The Themyscirans released bears into the tunnels. Claudius Drusus died in AD 20 from asphyxiation when he tossed a pear in the air and caught it in his mouth. The pear tree was put on trial, found guilty of murder, and destroyed. The Spartans never built a city wall, figuring that their reputation alone would mean no one would dare attack them. But, during the Persian War, the Persians, who had already burned Athens twice, hired a Greek guide to take them to Sparta. But when they got there, they saw a kinda crap-looking city without even a wall. They figured there was no way this place could be the mighty Sparta they had heard so much about. So they figured the Greek was lying, and thus Sparta was spared. Edit: I'm remembering this from reading it in the book Persian Fire by Tom Holland. It's quite possible that I'm misremembering details, or that Holland's text identifies this as a legend or story. Still, the book is a fantastic read and I heartily recommend it. In ancient Egypt, servants were smeared with honey to attract flies away from the pharaoh. The first bomb dropped on Berlin by the British during World War II claimed no human casualties. But it did kill an elephant. The Battle of Bull Run, during the American Civil War, was called the Picnic Battle, because so many civilians from Washington went on picnics on the sidelines and watched. But once the battle actually started, and the Union started to get its ass kicked, they all ran away, running over injured soldiers and dead bodies and generally disrupting the battle. This was actually a relatively common thing during the Civil War. I know it happened at Gettysburg too. At one time there was not only a pope and an anti-pope but also a counter-anti-pope. A Chinese emperor escaped an assassin by running around a pillar. After 2 hours, the assassin got bored and went home, and wasn't charged for his crimes. At his President Andrew Jackson's funeral in 1845, his pet parrot had to be removed because it was swearing. Colombia has a period in history literally called the Dumb Homeland period because of how incredibly dumb politicians acted at the time. Montenegro technically was in war with Japan for 101 years and they signed a peace treaty in 2006. Montenegro was aligned with Russia in Russo-Japanese War and they declared war on Japan, but they forgot to peace. When the Netherlands was occupied by Nazis in 1940, many people fled to Canada, including Princess Juliana of the Netherlands and her husband Prince Bernard of Lippe-by-Esterfeld. Their daughter, Princess Marguerite, was born in Ottawa. Not knowing if the baby would be male, and hence the heir to the throne, Canada declared the maternity ward of the Ottawa Hospital extraterritorial, which means it became international territory. This meant that the baby would derive its nationality only from its mother, making it 100% Dutch. The shortest war occurred between Zanzibar and the British Empire, lasting around 45 minutes. During the most critical portion of World War II, the Japanese thought they had sunk or disabled 3 American carriers when, in reality, they had only bombed the USS Yorktown 3 times. They were caught with their pants down when the bombs started landing at Midway. There used to be bread stamps, burned into a cooked loaf of bread, to avoid bread fraud, as the government supplied the wheat flour, but some bakers tried to use sawdust and other ingredients in the bread to make the wheat last longer. The bread stamps were baker-specific, so they could track down where any tainted bread came from. If they were caught, they had to move to another town to make bread, or wait 3 years to continue making bread if I remember correctly. As St. Lawrence was roasted to death on a gridiron, he is said to have remarked to his torturers, "I am cooked on this side, turn me over." St. Lawrence is the patron saint of cooks and comedians. During World War II, a bunch of German soldiers got separated in rural Russia. They were trudging through snow with no food or water for days before finally finding a supply drop that missed its mark. They opened it up and found only black pepper and condoms, said it. For anyone wondering, my source for this is Storm of War by Andrew Roberts. Unfortunately, I can't remember the page number because I read the book a few years ago, but I believe the chapter is called Clash of the Titans. I'm sorry I don't have a more exact source, but I'm a random commenter, not a history teacher. Admiral Zinovy Roshestvensky of the Imperial Russian Navy was so notorious for throwing his binoculars into the sea during fits of rage that his staff always ensured his flagship had an extra crate of binoculars on board. Some more fun stuff about him: he would make up insulting nicknames for ships and officers he disliked, such as the lecherous slut, the sink by themselves squadron, or the guard's uniform hanger, beat the tar out of crew members that disobeyed him, would fire live ammunition across the bows of errant ships, and was known to pull other ships alongside his just to scream at its captain in front of the entire crew. Despite all this, he was considered one of the best officers in the Russian Navy and was well liked by his crew, and took full blame for his defeat at the Battle of Tsushima in order to save some officers from the death penalty. So while he may have been hot-headed and had high standards for his crew, he was ultimately a fair and honorable man, just doing the best he could with what he had, and probably better than could be expected of anyone else in his position. And honestly, the Russian 2nd Pacific Squadron's voyage is a ridiculous topic in of itself. The amount of sheer incompetence is comical. DrakenFL has a fantastic video, https youtube.b9mdfh9ag, on it, would highly recommend. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day, July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of them both signing the Declaration of Independence. Adams's last words were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." He was wrong by about 5 hours. General Omar Bradley was stopped by MP during the Battle of the Bulge in World War II due to them thinking he was a Nazi infiltrator. The irony was that he was stopped because he correctly identified the capital of Illinois as Springfield when the officer thought it was Chicago. The Battle for Castleder, https://n.wikipedia.org. Wiki battle for Castleder, a castle in Austria where the Wehrmacht and Americans fought side by side with French pals against the SS. Seriously, someone should make a movie about this. #X200B. Geographics has a fantastic video on it. https://www.youtube.com. Watch. V7P3B0 Vskok, #X200B, edit. Tactical Toast 7 wrote a much more in-depth explanation of the story. Go check it out. https://www.reddit.com. AskReddit comments 9 Kufu Wataresama ridiculous history facts fees 832t. Source shared media and web 2x. The longest ever US presidential inauguration speech was made by William Henry Harrison on March 4, 1841. The day had terrible weather, yet Harrison chose to deliver his speech nonetheless, running 8,445 words. In fact, the speech was so long, and the weather so terrible, that Harrison caught pneumonia and died on April 4, making him the shortest reigning US president ever. The election of Volodymyr Zelensky, https://n.wikipedia.org. Wiki Volodymyr Zelensky as President of Ukraine. People talk about how crazy it is that a reality TV star got elected President of the US, but I think this story is even crazier. Zelensky was the star of a political satire show called Servant of the People, https://n.wikipedia.org. Wiki Servant of the People, where he played the President of Ukraine. The show's last episode aired on March 28, 2019. 3 days later, Zelensky carried 30% of the popular vote in the first round of elections, almost double the number carried by the incumbent President Petro Poroshenko in second. 3 weeks later, in round 2 of the election, Zelensky won with 73% of the popular vote. This is like West Wing star Martin Sheen defeating George Bush to become president in 2004. Just seems like the type of thing that'll be turned into a great documentary in 50 years. Ancient Greek and Roman marble statues were actually originally painted and were colorful. A lot of the statues' paint faded away and went away over time. Some people cleaned off the paint thinking it was debris or dirt. And other people just plain cleaned and removed all of the paint off of them because they preferred the look of white marble. Rome was actually a very colorful city, and it wasn't all made of just boring plain white marble. The capture of the Dutch fleet at Den Helder on the night of January 23, 1795 presents a rare occurrence of a naval battle between warships and cavalry, in which a French Revolutionary Hussar regiment captured a Dutch Republican fleet frozen at anchor between the 3 kilometers (1.9 miles) stretch of sea that separates the mainland port of Den Helder and the island of Texel. After a charge across the frozen Zuiderzee, the French cavalry captured 14 Dutch ships and 850 guns. A capture of ships by horsemen is an extremely rare feat in military history. https://n.wikipedia.org Wiki capture of the Dutch fleet at Den Helder. During the Cold War, there was an idea to drop XL condoms labeled medium onto the Soviets to make them think we were anatomically superior and be more afraid of fighting us. Easily my favorite part of American history.